I want just to comment on a few videos today. And the first one is from this guy, you can see here. Go and like and subscribe to his channel if you like this video. So the first one is Ubisoft Insiders reveals woke industry in full panic mode, Assassin's Creed Shadows and Witcher Burn.
It's Endymion, and I got some more information about Ubisoft I figured I should probably tell you all about. I spoke to some sources which have been in games for a very long time. These sources have worked at Ubisoft in a higher position than you would even expect. Obviously, I promised them I wouldn't say more than that. They didn't even want me to list which franchises they've worked on within Ubisoft. And they also told me not to tell you guys what other IPs they've worked on at other studios, so I promised them that I wouldn't. I could tell the entire time that I spoke.
Yeah, this seems legit. This seems maybe it's one of the executives or whatever.
Source that they were very timid and nervous about speaking to me in the first
Maybe a
place.
woman?
Beyond what they told me, I want to also share some other
Because they were so timid.
information I've heard about other dev studios like Funcom and their upcoming game Dune Awakening. And even CD Projekt Red, which makes Cyberpunk and Witcher, and then there's some other more public things we can talk about from other websites too. Okay, let's start.
Okay.
Firstly, this source told me that the way AAA is right now is leading to an inevitable gaming crash. They told me that waiting for this crash to happen...
Yeah, because the AAA gaming, the production of AAA gaming has become too expensive, I think, which was talked before on YouTube. And creatively, they cannot assume like too much of a bigger risk. They have the same kind of template, and from that template they can just deviate a bit. So yeah, they have much bigger risk to lose much more money because the production costs lots of money.
Happen is pointless because in their opinion we are already within a gaming crash right now.
Yeah, I think so.
Anyways,
just because what I said, the games cost lots of money, and when they don't make a profit, the companies lose a lot and they can go bankrupt. The risk is real,
as they specify. They also told me that they were shocked when they heard that Tencent was in talks to take Ubisoft private or outright buy them. As this source, which I said has a lot of experience in the industry, they claim that Tencent only buys profitable companies that are doing well. And they were puzzled as to why Tencent would go out of their way to buy a company like Ubisoft that has been struggling for so long publicly. Although
but the thing is, will they like keep the same type of games? Like the games are already stale, their formats, like how much they can improve on that until the games become something else, and how they can, the question is how they can improve the games so much without risking lots of money, to lose lots of money, because that's difficult. Like a AAA game doesn't risk that much of a budget, and they can of course risk more, like try new things. But AAA, yeah, it's difficult when there's been so many like Assassin's Creed games with the same format.
We both surmise in our audio call that the likelihood is that Tencent isn't really after Ubisoft as a company per se, but it's actually the IPs that they own. Because Ubisoft be damned, their portfolio is full of lucrative IP that is...
Yeah, of course, it's their IPs, even if like if they are interested in the company, or they say they are interested in the company, of course it's the IP. At the end of the day, it's the IPs they are interested, because that's the product of the company that can make the money. Of course, not about their reputation, but about the company's reputation.
Assassin's Creed alone is worth over $1 billion most likely, not to mention all the Tom Clancy stuff like Rainbow Six and more. Hopefully, if Ubisoft's IPs get bought, maybe I can get a sequel to Child of Light, but I don't have...
Hopefully they get bought and improved a lot, of course.
This source is also skeptical about Tencent buying Ubisoft outright, because they believe that French laws will step in to stop the acquisition from happening 100%. They believe, due to how the French government is, even if Tencent were to somehow acquire more of Ubisoft, the actual identity of Ubisoft will be protected due to its national identity being so closely tied to France. They told me the real reason why many games are failing is down to overspending, inflation, and bloat at studios across the industry.
Yeah, of
From
course,
what they have
just
seen
what I said.
firsthand working on many AAA.
I don't know how the laws, like I'm a legal counselor, but I don't know with a bachelor degrees, but I don't know how the laws of France can influence. Maybe they are not allowed to sell to Chinese companies, or maybe other French companies have the priority to buy them, which I don't know any that are French. Anyhow,
Play games themselves, the
that might
budgets
be
of
the
these
case.
games are completely out of whack about 99% of the time. They told me it's also not any single dev's fault as to how things necessarily turn out in AAA due to how massive these companies are, especially places like Ubisoft. They told me that they roll their eyes whenever they hear anyone on the internet claim that they would do this character design differently or this gameplay mechanic this way if they had the power to do so. Because the reality is that in AAA studios, every single thing that gets added to a game has to go through so many different departments in order for it to get approved. And then
Yeah, of course, there's too many layers, and I think the creative process can get lost through all these layers. Like there might be a good artist, a good designer in the industry or in that company, but if there are so many layers and he's under all these layers of choice, let's say, of bosses, yeah, the creative process gets changed changed during this process, or outright like removed, or some parts of it removed, if that makes sense.
there's plenty of times you don't even know who's exactly approving your work these days either. For example, changing a character's design
Yeah,
is not
that makes the situation even worse, because you cannot talk to that guy, like you don't know which guy or which boss wanted this choice or that other choice to discuss with them. If you don't like their choices, that's even worse.
actually up to the character artist. As they were saying to me, most character artists in modern gaming studios tend to create upwards of 20 plus variants of any which character in a game. And then the actual decisions are then decided by the higher ups, which is obvious to everyone. I think we all know that. But they said that they hope by speaking to me that I
They
can
push the
relate
agenda,
to
of
the
course.
internet that it's not necessarily your artists or designers that are to blame that games like Concord happen. It's this very tiny minority of people at the top who are actually deciding everything.
Yeah, that
And they
makes
told
sense.
me that it saddens them to see ordinary people at places like Ubisoft who will likely get axed and lose their jobs over decisions that they had no power in making themselves.
Yeah, that's really bad. Yeah.
It's a tale as old as time at this point, sadly. Out of touch executives demand something, then the grunts do the work, only for the decision made not to work in their favor. And instead of getting rid of the executive who was
Like you don't have any other choice but to go with the boss's choices, even if you don't like them. And if you don't like them as a developer, I think it makes you like don't like your work after all. So if you don't like your work, I think your work decreases in quality maybe.
responsible for the decision in the first place, the people who were just doing what they were told get fired and blamed instead. They say that they
Or
hope
that can
players
happen.
have more compassion for devs in the industry and realize that a lot of the issues plaguing the industry are actually out of a lot of these devs' hands. They did tell me that because of how corporate structure is by design, especially at places like Ubisoft, that speaking out against anything that is considered political or activism like can and will lead to you getting fired and likely
Yeah.
blacklisted as well. They say that there's a very bad case of tone deaf leadership that has completely disconnected itself from the wants and needs of players across the industry. For example, another source I was talking to told me that CD Projekt Red is in absolute chaos right now, based on who actually is still working there that used to work on the previous games. Apparently, lots of senior talent has already left CD Projekt Red. For example, the director of Witcher 3 has long left the studio, and they've
That's
already
bad.
created their own studio with their own new game as well. Apparently, places like
I think some
Warhorse Studios, the makers of Kingdom Come Deliverance, they have actually been poaching talent from CD Projekt Red like crazy. These
of
past
course,
few
because they're in the same country, they're in the Czech Republic, but I think they lost some talent, but they gained some with the the new patch of Cyberpunk, when they remade some of Cyberpunk systems and their value increased in the stock market because everybody liked it, of course.
And I was told that problems that are plaguing Ubisoft, like
But that's really smart of Warhorse Studios. Now I know why they make so good quests, really good quests. Like, they are really unique. If you play Skyrim and if you play, which I also love, but if you play Skyrim and if you play Kingdom Come Deliverance, you can see the difference in quality of quests in Kingdom Come Deliverance, which are really unique from normal, like, kind of fetch quests. Yeah, I can call them fetch quests, most of them in Skyrim.
diversity hires are also starting to damage and ruin
Like, check the priest's quest in the game in Kingdom Come Deliverance, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
CD Projekt Red as well. According to that other source, CD Projekt has begun to rely heavily on outsourcing to contractors to help with their games because the new talent that they have is nowhere near where they need them to be right now. I was told the reason why the next Witcher is using Unreal Engine instead of the Red Engine that previous games did.
The Babe, thanks for following, and everyone else.
Because most of the senior talent that worked and understood the Red Engine are not at CD anymore, and Unreal is more of a one-size-fits-all sort of engine that many devs are familiar with these days.
Yep.
But in general, we have been seeing lots of recent game studios stating that there's
lots of them use them across the board, I think, nowadays, and you will use them because it makes their job easier, and like, they can go from company to company and they still will know what they are doing. Like, some companies will hire people that already know this engine, the Unreal Engine 5. So yeah, there will not be a big discrepancy of engines across the industry, if you know what I mean.
Switching to Unreal over their own in-house engines. A great example that was recent was Halo Studios, which was formerly known as 3.
I think Unreal Engine 5, because I also tried to make a game in it, just needs better documentation, just needs more tutorials to be as useful as it can be.
3 Industries also confirming that they're making the next Halo game in Unreal as well. This is all being done because it's easier to understand, and Unreal makes it much easier to port your games to various consoles. So it's both a business decision, but also because newer age devs are not seasoned with a lot of what made previous games work. But as I'm told, CD Projekt Red right now is in a very tough spot, and they're apparently hoping that their pedigree is going to carry these games to millions in sales.
Hopefully,
but I truly
yes.
hope whatever comes from the next Witcher or Cyberpunk, that it isn't a repeat of 2077's launch, because they can't afford another disaster like that again.
Yeah.
Circling back to what my Ubisoft insider was telling me, they said another big reason why the game industry is hurting is because the growth that the industry was experiencing has begun to plateau, if you will. Before, we would have multiple years in a row where the industry would be growing 10 to even 15% year over year. Now, the industry...
Plateau may be because of the 2020 case, where it went way high, and now it fell a bit, and now it plateaued, because there are not so many players anymore staying home and playing games. So it will be a while until we pass this threshold again, I think.
The industry is expected to grow about 6% overall by 2028 to become an industry worth over $250 billion. Which, yes, that's a lot of money, but it's a far cry from the mammoth growth of the 2010s. As my sources told me, the real battle right now brewing in these companies is a battle of the eyes.
2020, I mean.
Because of this stagnant growth,
and maybe 2022, just the year following 2020.
Of eyes out there, or people, I guess you could say, that can be reached is limited to a degree. So this battle of spending billions to make these games to steal players from other live service games has created what I can only call a whirlpool straight to the bottom. These companies are all insanely competitive, we know this, and they are constantly trying to poach players from other games as these live service competitors try to feed their own games instead of other ones. As I'm told, this dev believes that...
Yeah, and I think it's harder and harder to compete with the best ones, like maybe Larian today, like comparing Bethesda to Larian, and yeah, they need big changes which cost a lot of money. So yeah, it will be a while to reach that point. I think the best thing is to play different games all the time and play them less. This is how you like them more. if that makes sense.
Less than 1% of mobile games
Like,
that are
because this is what you can control. You cannot control the quality of, like, you cannot control that much the quality of the games that come out. You can write, of course, comments on and tweets, but some developers don't listen, like Bethesda and Ubisoft. You can control what you do precisely.
made become profitable as well in today's age. And this trend is sadly not changing. I mean, back in 2014, only around 0.15% of mobile games attributed for about 50% of the gross income from players.
Yeah, the
Flash
mobile
forward
games
to now,
industry is
and
really
the
big.
exact number that I was given by this dev, that it's somewhere more like 0.03% of mobile games.
Because they are easier to play everywhere. Like, you have a phone in your pocket everywhere you go. So yeah,
Gaining most of the revenue these days. So that's a lot of flops. I mean, that's pretty much almost all mobile games are a flop at that point. I know that sounds insane, but this trend has had many studios and devs pushing their games franchises to mimic what these successful phone games or live service offerings are now doing. It's also why you're seeing it in the console space.
that's bad, trying to replicate mobile games on other consoles, platforms, because the quality decreases. Like, mobiles have way less, they are way less powerful, they have way less RAM and worse processors than, let's say, personal computers or consoles. So like PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series S, whatever the recent Xbox is. I'm a bit confused, but yeah, that's the point. Mobiles are less powerful and they try to replicate them, which is really bad. They make the PC games and console games worse. They make them mobile like.
And beyond. It's why stuff like Suicide Squad was randomly made into a live service game by a developer who, had really zero experience in that field. It also didn't help that the DEI Sweet Baby stuff turned players away on top of that. But this corporate greed is a big reason why so many game studios and publishers are just bleeding money right now. I asked this insider source what they thought of Sweet Baby, and they told me that they see all of those consulting groups to be plagues in the industry. They said that good, honest devs are paying the price for the moronic decisions that are being made by consultants.
Yeah, it breaks artistic creativity, I think, and I think maybe maybe originality, or artistic creativity. It breaks some of that, which is really bad when you try to push agendas.
Consulting firms. This also ties into localization. I mean, I've played plenty of games.
Yeah, and maybe originality. Maybe you want to do some things a certain way, and because bosses push other people agenda, like, that gets deleted, removed.
That have sadly had poor localization at times. For example, the new Metaphor ReFantazio apparently also has localization problems, which is unfortunate because one of the hardest things to fix in the gaming industry right now is the localizer problem. Because by and large, these localizers are paid for their work, and they never have to face their own actions when it comes to what they did on the game itself. Metaphor looks great. I don't want people to boycott that game, but it is a shame that it has localization problems in the first place. Same goes with Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, like
I don't know
which I'm playing right now.
in what percentages they have localization problems. I don't know if it's even out. Is that even out? Like Metaphor, the one that's like Persona 5 Royal.
All these games and more have varying degrees of localizer nonsense in them. Do I think it should stop you from...
I don't even pay attention. I think it's better if you don't pay attention to these things. Like, it's better because it's out of your control. The same thing I was talking before, these localization problems. But if you ignore them and you don't pay any attention, or you pay less attention, I think it's better for you as the gamer.
Playing these games entirely, that's up to you to decide. I do think there's a difference between the activism of devs versus the localizers. Because from what I'm told, most localization is done in-house at a single studio that translates most other languages for a single game. They work as contractors mostly. Like I said, once it's done, they don't really face the consequences of their actions. Do I think you're a hypocrite if you complain about localization while also playing games with bad localization? I don't. It's like saying you're a hypocrite because you dislike the government, yet you have to pay taxes to that same government.
What I was talking about.
These sorts of problems are just complicated. In localization anyways, the problem is far harder to change than, say, when a game is openly just slop, like Dustborn is. Because in Dustborn's case, it's just bad. We can all see that. You don't need a localizer to change dialogue for you. to see that Dustborn is just very clearly low quality all around. Like, Dustborn has its villains be conservatives, basically. That's not a localizer choice. That was something that was chosen again by the people at the top of that studio, in this case, Red Thread Games. I think if people play Metaphor or Dragon Ball, you're not supporting bad localization necessarily, you're supporting the devs behind those games.
Yeah, of course.
And in localization changes in the future anyways, it's going to be
You
really...
in reality, you support both, but of course you care about just the game and maybe the devs. You don't care about localization stuff. Like, I never think about that when playing games, but I play them as a break between work kind of stuff and like really small amounts per day, so I don't have time to focus on these things. Maybe if you focus on these things, you play too much of a game, and it helps if you take a break from it. I think maybe that's my case. I don't know if it's other people's case, but it might be.
hard and insufferable to change. But from what I'm told on these projects and more is that the industry is in a very bad spot when it comes to DEI and propaganda being pushed. Like I said earlier, many of the
Yeah, of course it's more nowadays than it was before, I think.
people I've spoken to say that they will get blacklisted and fired if they were to be discovered talking to me. Which is really sad to see, because what this really means is that these devs are genuinely not allowed to speak their minds about things these days at all.
Yeah, and that's a law of the entire like European Union and maybe world. Well, in some parts it doesn't apply, like Russia and of course the eastern countries, communist countries, but you have to be allowed to speak your mind kinda everywhere,
Unless it's approved by the
and not get fired for it, of course, because that's against the human rights is called.
hive mind, if you will. This isn't healthy, and frankly, it's pathetic that the industry has instilled this cult-like behavior that every person I speak to has to either seen it all happen or dealt with it themselves. Throw all the massive budgets, localizing, or stagnant growth aside, the activism and fear of retribution by these powerful entity-driven executives is actually what's killing a lot of your favorite games. Everything else I've said are added layers on the crap pie that they're also
Yeah, it
serving.
kills creativity and originality, what I said before.
As my source told me, they couldn't believe their eyes when they saw stuff like Fair Games getting announced, calling it a hypocritical dumpster fire that they really hope fails because,
Hello.
as they said, it's a game about stealing from
Long
the
time no
rich
see.
that is being made by a company like PlayStation,
Long time no chat.
which is obviously wealthy, and then it stars people of color that are just robbing people of their valuables, which is not a good look. They do think that the industry is being torn apart from opposing angles
seeing
on
you
all
here.
of these problems. Things are way too expensive, yet they also claim that the technology has never been better and should in theory allow for things to be made for less resources than before. But because of
That's
the
right.
massive overspending and scoping and these modern AAA games that these studios, they end up bloating up in order to fulfill what they actually deem important. More fidelity, more graphical quality, make the water look nice, and so on.
Yeah, they did,
So
and they
forth,
still
well.
do, or will do.
On the other end, another person is in a position they shouldn't be in, is pushing for everything to be gay and diverse, which doesn't help things. And then every decision has to be approved by focus test groups and supervisors who have to send the change first to their boss, who then has to send it to the big
Too many
bosses
layers.
at the very top.
I'll speak, on this channel. No, it's English only now.
And by the time one decision gets made on a gameplay,
Because it's
mechanic
hard
or
to
some
speak
sort
in
of
more
asset,
languages
the
when
amount of
more
time
people
and
come
money
up,
that
that's
gets
why.
spent to make something happen is ludicrous for what could have been done in that small span of time instead. It's why, as my source told me, they think that indie games will be the ones carrying the industry in the future for sure. Because making AAA games can oftentimes, in their eyes, feel more like it's being done at a snail's pace. It's like trying to build a house, but
Yep.
before you can lay a single brick down, every time you got to call your boss to call the company owner to tell you that it's okay to lay down that single brick. And you do
Yeah, it
that
makes-
every single time,
It makes the
the
process really slow.
whole house is done. And most developers who aren't in charge of the things you likely hate in gaming are mostly just innocent in all of this. Most of them, apparently, what I'm being told is that they just come to work, they get told, hey, you gotta do this, make it look good or sound good or play well by this deadline. And then they do it, they send it in, which goes through all the channels that I mentioned before. Then whatever it is they worked on is either okayed or sent to change.
And I think the last good games for Ubisoft was, yeah, Origins is really good. I think Valhalla too, which I also love, but because I like the universe of the Vikings.
which then goes back through all the channels again, and then this just leads to this tired, exhaustive process.
Yeah, I think that deadlines can kill creativity too. No, I think it's just so bad. Yep.
That is needed to make
Did you like Valhalla?
every game in AAA these days, but generally speaking, it's not the developers' fault that these games are ass, mostly anyway. Of course, I am told you will definitely run into many people who shouldn't have the jobs that they have, and once you factor in toxic positivity, this all becomes a powder keg for really bad.
Yeah, it's like lots of stuff that combined kill the devs' jobs, especially the ones that have to be creative, like designers of characters and level designers
being made and never being addressed or corrected, and Concord is a perfect example of that. This source also told me another reason why Ubisoft's quality has gone into the stinker is because not only has key talent left, but people like Serge or Sergei Hoskot, I'm probably saying that name wrong, being forced out of the company. Although in this instance anyway, it seems like it was justified as into why someone like Sergey or Serge left Ubisoft. He used to be the chief creative officer at Ubisoft and was responsible for ensuring whatever was coming out of the company would meet a certain quality bar before releasing to the public. However, in 2023, Sergey or Serge Hascott, along with a few other employees at Ubisoft, well, they got accused of sexual harassment against other employees. And this has now led to an ongoing battle behind the scenes where Serge or Sergey and these other devs are currently being investigated and dealing with legal proceedings. It's not 100% clear.
And of course, because he has legal proceedings, he cannot go and work for the company, which is bad. Valhalla was just not too RPG for my taste. Okay, the story was so boring, the combat was awful. The single good thing about Valhalla was the universe. Yeah, but for me, because I play so rarely, don't get me started on Shadows and okay, Bones. Yeah, School of Bones and was like a scam maybe. Yeah, they try to scam people with it. And Shadows, I don't know, because it's not out. But the same, I like the universe.
That he is guilty of anything yet. Well, as of the making
Then
of this video anyway,
I need to make this larger to see because the screen is so far away. Wait a sec. The school was bad. I need to make the screen larger. Okay. They were so good. Forgot his name.
Ben, but from what I'm told, this Surge guy was great at his job, but of course that doesn't excuse the fact that if he is found guilty of what he did, whether he was good at his job or not, he was clearly taking advantage of people, allegedly. If and when that whole situation finalizes, I'll let you guys.
Well, if Assassin's Creed Shadows comes out, that's the last universe I think I like, the Japanese one, and then I don't care what happens to their company. Of course, I want them to succeed, but I don't think they have any more. Maybe a medieval, because I like medieval games. Medieval atmosphere universe can be in Assassin's Creed, but other than that, they don't have any other universes that they can explore. Actually, look at the trailer. Yeah, I saw the trailer.
No,
I thought it was woke, of course, like anybody else. I thought they could make like a Japanese character.
According to my source, having people like that in terms of what they did job-wise was one of the reasons why Ubisoft was still on track and still giving some quality at least, but obviously they're gone now because, well, you know why now. If it turns out this guy is innocent, he should probably be reinstated.
But it's Ubisoft, somewhat can do. It looks cool, but it's Ubisoft, so what can we do? Yeah.
But of course, if he's found guilty, well, what's done is done, and it's time to move on. It actually reminds me of the director of Valhalla and Origins, whose name is Ashraf Ismail. Sure, he directed two of Ubisoft's biggest hits, but he was also accused of using his position to leverage sexual favors from female staff members.
That's right.
And ended up getting fired from the company following that lawsuit. It says that he's had a leave of absence following the allegations, and if you go to his LinkedIn, he's still labeled as a creative director at Ubisoft, even though he hasn't technically...
Yeah, of course he cannot work because of the legal proceedings.
...anything that I know of for the past 4 years. Regardless, why I'm bringing this up is because Ubisoft has a tendency to hire people who very clearly use their positions of power to get what they want out of others. My sources also told me for a long time...
Yeah, and they have lots of money too, so of course they have lots of power.
...when they worked with Ubisoft, that they oftentimes foster what was called a boys club. And this boys' club would lead to many complaints behind the scenes. In Serge or Sergey's and Ashraf's case, they were publicly shown to the world for what they did.
Baldur's
But
Gate
I'm
3.
told there's plenty where that came from just at Ubisoft alone.
Oh yeah, and you like Game of Thrones?
But for years, these sorts of people were having their behavior overlooked by executives as long as they kept delivering quality experiences that would make the company billions. I know this isn't unique to only Ubisoft, but it's something that needs to be discussed regardless. Besides those two people I mentioned, there were others that also got fired for harassment as well.
That's the answer.
For example, there was an Ubisoft PR director named Stone Chin. Yeah, that's their real name, and they were also fired for harassment reasons too. As well as another HR employee
like, do you like Game of Thrones? Universe.
Cecile Corneau, or Cornet, and then Ubisoft Canadian Studios head.
I play a lot Bannerlord with Realm of Thrones on PC mod, which makes the whole Bannerlord universe the Game of Thrones one. Realm of Thrones is called.
Yanis Malat.
You can search it on YouTube.
And I didn't know this at first, is that after looking into this further...
Yeah, I played the Telltale one 2 times. I finished it 2 times. But I love the Bannerlord Realm of Thrones mode, because you spend like hundreds of hours.
It turns out that Ashraf Ismail, the former director of Origins and Valhalla, is actually working in the games industry still, and wouldn't you know, he's working for none other.
Or you can try the Crusader Kings 2 or Crusader Kings 3 total conversion for Game of Thrones.
Then Tencent. This Ashraf Ismail guy has been working at Timmy Studios for Tencent since around 2022. So this guy, pretty much based on what I'm reading here and how things are lined up, got fired at Ubisoft at a very high up position, and then Tencent pretty much just scooped him up immediately to help consult at Timmy Studios. Apparently, this Timmy Studios is also located in Montreal as well, so Ash didn't even have to move in order to continue working in the industry. As of now, there's no mention as to what this new studio is working on. However, based on reports I'm reading here, Ash is working alongside
I think Baldur's Gate 3 with mods
Ubisoft employees at this new studio
is the best you can have right now.
Founded by Tencent. Which, of course, if you remember, I reported before that Tencent is allegedly a big reason why Ubisoft is in such dire straits.
Or maybe try other genres of games you didn't play before.
Right now. And they're being accused by some of my sources that claim that they are poison pilling Ubisoft into eventually becoming so weak and worthless that they're pretty much begging to be bought up and controlled. Tencent also said about this Ashraf Ismail guy that he's shown professionalism and a consistent eagerness to learn and grow as a person. So this guy pretty much got handed a golden ticket after getting kicked out of the highest tower, which is crazy. I do wonder what they're making. I also assume whenever any info comes out about this game, you can bet that every article is going to reference how this guy got fired for harassment and such at Ubisoft. I also mentioned Funcom very early on in this video about being another studio that's in trouble too. Funcom, if you don't know, is working on Dune Awakening, which is an upcoming survival open world.
Oh, that's bad. I love Dune.
Based on what I've been told about this game, there's a lot of
That's Game of Thrones in space.
And chaos behind the scenes surrounding that game as well right now. And by the way, who owns Funcom?
It's really interesting, politically speaking.
Yeah, it's Tencent. From what I'm told, this Dune
that's crazy.
Game is currently
I
in
don't know
some
that.
inner turmoil struggle between Tencent wanting to put their people in charge of the project, while Funcom's heads want to lead it instead. Apparently, the Funcom side wants this Dune game to look more like the recent movies did, but Tencent is pushing Funcom to implement more flashy, oversaturated graphics instead. Apparently, Dune Awakening
they go for the mobile look, of course.
Real direction as of the last few months, and developers are pissed over there because nothing can really be decided on, and the heads of Tencent and Funcom, they can't seem to agree on anything. So there's another game alongside other dev studios like CD Projekt Red and Ubisoft that are all being in their own versions of chaos right now. And one of the last things my first source in this video brought up is that they are very happy to see these things being talked about.
I hope this game succeeds.
Because according to them,
because I love the movie so much.
In a negative light within game studios, you might as well as put the barrel in your mouth yourself and then pull the trigger on your career. Because not being okay with diversity in terms of hiring based on identity and such is being looked at as if you're the evilest person imaginable. This source mostly reached out to me because they wanted me to
I don't like this.
Better understand how
I think I'm gonna
are made these days.
wait for What, I don't see it?
They told me that they think many YouTubers don't understand the process properly.
I'm gonna wait for
and they
Dying
wanted me
Light,
to
the
understand
Beast.
that these are real human beings whose jobs are being threatened
What is
by
this,
the
a
choices of
new
few
DLC or
crazy
something?
people at
Or a
the
new
top
game?
of these studio food chains. They do hope in the future, as they asked me to tell you all, that players don't harass devs as much going forward, because it can be soul-crushing for these individual devs. But ultimately, they do hope that the industry goes back to hiring based on merit and not identity as it is right now. This dev pretty much said that they actually like diversity in gaming, and they do think that it's a net.
What I don't like, new game. Oh, that's awesome. I still play Dying Light 1, which I thought it was better than Dying Light 2. This diversity when hiring, I think, is really bad, because of course hiring all types of manners of people is okay. Is that done? Yeah, it's done. Hiring all types of people is okay with me. It's not okay to hire more one type of people than others, like hiring any type of people other than men, so you leave men behind, and this is discriminatory too of men, because you of course leave them behind, you don't hire them, so you think you solve a problem, but you do some other stuff, you do some other bad stuff.
But they think that the way it's being pushed by many of these core companies are instead being used as a weapon, when it should be used more
Like jobs, like foreign jobs nowadays ask a lot if you are the color you are, and what type of sex you are, what type of a gender, and I think this goes on a bad path. So yeah, you discriminate men, hiring only some type of people.
so like a bridge to bring people together.
Like, if we are all equal, let's be equal, because otherwise we are not.
To say this dev was optimistic and compassionate about fellow devs, that would be an understatement. And it sucks that they have to hide themselves in order to talk to me, because from what I gathered here,
This
they
some
just want to
heavy
make
shit.
cool
I'm
games,
talking
and they're
already.
sad when they see passionate people get burned for things that they have no control over in the first place. So hopefully what I explained in this video helped you understand the industry a little bit better than you did before you saw this.
Yeah,
This industry is not
It's
full
going-
of evil people. Sure, there are plenty, and we need to focus
it's going worse and worse, some companies, except Larian and Rockstar maybe at this point.
our attention on those people specifically. But we also need to realize that there's a lot of devs that are being caught in the crossfire here, and unfortunately, I don't think this
Yeah.
will change the
It's not their fault.
overzealous devs out there who will still attack fans. And when they do, the
There's a
internet-
percentage of devs which don't have any fault, I think, and maybe there's a small, the minority, of course, what he said is the ones that have the fault for this diversity stuff.
will surely push back. That's been happening a lot, and it will keep happening. Let's be real, guys. But as it stands, Ubisoft and places like CD Projekt Red are apparently in a lot of trouble right now, and I'm at least hoping in CD's case that the leadership is smart enough to course correct before we end up with another Cyberpunk 2077 Part 2 release situation again.
Yeah.
But as they say, time will tell. So thank you for watching, subscribe, thanks to my supporters, and I'll see you in the next one.
Ubisoft made a mistake by hiring only women for Star Wars Outlaw when half of the team were men who worked on the game and got involved. Yep, yeah, that's right. And mostly men are playing them, so yeah, that's another bad stuff.